A quick warning before we get started. This episode contains discussions of sensitive topics and traumatic events, including drug addiction, child sexual abuse and domestic abuse. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to another episode of Shameless Stories. And today I am joined by my lovely friend, Sara Goode. I'm going to let her introduce herself in a second. We're just going to riff on what shame means to us, how that can manifest in stories, and how we can move through that shame by owning those stories. And we were just getting really into a real juicy part of our conversation, and we realized that we probably should record this. So without further ado, Sara, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there, everyone. I'm Sara. I am a woman's mentor and also a wellbeing coach and trainer. So I'm also a mum to a daughter of 15 and partner to Matthew. So yeah, that's who I am, and a good friend to Sarah. So thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, I'm so honoured to have you on, and you know, we have journeyed together. Again, this seems to happen. I have a few lovely clients that we've journeyed together with, and you know, they have amazing stories, and I want to, you know, share them with the world. And I got to do that with Sara. Me and my family got to hang out with you at one of the halls in Wales that you work with. And yeah, it was mind-blowing for my relationship with my husband and my children, just like hanging out with you guys with the horses and the fields and Wales. I mean, we were nearly thinking of moving.
We nearly got used, we just didn't quite, yeah.
But you know, this is the next best thing, right? So when we were working together, I asked you this question, and you know, this is a question I love to ask my guests. It's like, what's the worst? So first of all, what does shame mean to you? What, you know, the podcast is about shameless stories. What does shame mean to you, and what are your shame stories do you feel comfortable sharing with me today?
What does shame mean to me? I think that it means so many things, doesn't it? It means so many things. It means being stuck in those past stories, still remaining a victim of circumstance, and that feeling that all the things you could have or should have done, all the things that make you feel small and inadequate. It's all the choices. I tell you, I think what it comes down to for me is it's all the choices you made from a place of not knowing yourself and not being able to speak and choose what you really wanted to. And you didn't do it. You made choices not because that's what you wanted, but you thought that was your only option.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And I think that's what it comes down to for me. It's because when I look back, I think I wish I'd done that differently. Because in my heart at the time, you know there's something else that you can do, but you don't know what it is. You don't know how to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be a big thing or a small thing, can't it? I mean,
yeah.
You know, you have a very big story, and that's what we worked on together to share and kind of amplify in places, or you know, and unraveling those stories that you shared with me. I just remember being so struck with what you had been through. And I think there's, you know, we were talking off camera around the word victim and survive. Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, because I think
this is the work
the further along I've gone in my journey, the more I've got, the more I dislike the term victim. I feel like, you know, whenever we label something, we all see it from that perspective. So when you label yourself or somebody else a victim, you then automatically begin to treat them that way. Like, for you, nothing you can do, you know, everything's terrible, your life is over, you can't, there's nowhere but down from here. It kind of has all these negative connotations. And I think that really, unless you are not taking a breath, you're a survivor. Like, it doesn't matter how much of your life has been destroyed. If you wake up and you see another sunrise, you're a survivor. Even if your life is in tatters. And I know for many women and men out there, it can be in tatters. But if you wake up and you see another sunrise, you're a survivor. And know yourself as a survivor, not as a victim. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we were talking again a bit, and there's a story that's happening at the moment. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but currently in the mainstream media, there's a big story that's the BBC and Greg Wallace and all of these other things that are happening, unraveling at the moment. So when this airs, I'm not sure if this is still current, but I wanted to kind of bring and this has come up for a reason. I always feel this is the case. And something happened to me. I mean, it happened to me. I'm not a victim. I'm going to own this story. We come from a place of power in this space. And, back in my 20s, I was looking for love. I think we all were at that age. All the wrong places.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I went on a date. It was ill-advised because I knew, like, when I explore it a little bit more, when I go back and revisit it, I knew deep down it wasn't the right thing to do. But needless to say, in my late 20s, I was saying yes to lots of things. And I think, again, that's that period of time you do say yes to a lot of things. They may not be the right things, but we do them anyway because we're still learning at the end of the day. Our prefrontal the frontal lobe doesn't fully develop until we're like 22 or something. So I was still like, I'm blaming myself for being a bit of a woman toddler at that stage. So I mean, I went on a date with aforementioned MasterChef celebrity. I remember sitting in the restaurant that he was supplying his fruit and veg to, and meeting the chef and him ordering very expensive wine and not drinking it, and waving to his friends who just happened to be from Take That, and basically felt like Eliza Doolittle. And then it didn't really end there. I mean, what had happened was I'd got the train up. I'd met him at this restaurant, thinking I'd get the train home. He then said, "I'll drive you back." He drove me to, bear in mind this cough, that's funny. He drove me back to the train station, which was an hour away. But on the way there, he took a detour to show me his empire, which is fruit and veg land. Mm-hmm. And he drove me around this dark field of polytunnels to show me where he was growing his cauliflower. I mean, for goodness sake. And of course, by this point, I'm thinking, I'm in the car. It's dark. There's just polytunnels and cauliflower for company. I'm like, what am I actually doing here? There was a real realization of, oh my God, what am I doing here? And it was the time of the Nokia phone. So I text my friend saying I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable. He'd raised a few things that felt very uncomfortable as we were talking. Like, for example, he started singing The Owl and the Pussycat. Not quite sure why. I remember that really well. And he was also saying to me, "You're not a bad looker, but if you become my girlfriend, you'll need bigger boobs, so I'll pay for a boob job." And then tried to follow that up with a kiss. And I pushed away and just said, I don't do that on the first date. I was just being quite coy about it, but being quite nice about it, not like get off me. I didn't want to put myself in any more of an uncomfortable situation that I'd already done. And he then said, my friend had then messaged me back or phoned me, basically mood kill, drove me back to my car. I got into the car, drove home. And then the next few days I was stalked quite extensively from nice voicemails to nasty voicemails. And I think at the time, I remember sitting in the pub looking at my phone, just watching my phone ring and then go to voicemail and then ring and go to voicemail. And it was like, it was a real weird reality that I was sitting in. But then he finally kind of went away. And I'm really glad that he never knew where I lived. There was that feeling deep down that he didn't know where I lived. He just dropped me at a train station. So there was this, I was able to kind of cut that off, if you know what I mean. I was able to, that was an experience I don't want to repeat again. But God forbid other people that have been put in that situation and the result had been different. I kind of don't know why I'm even sharing this, but we were talking about this again off camera, and it's
we were talking off camera about this, weren't we? And there's interesting statements that were.
But yeah, I think I was putting myself in that victim, that narrative that women often do, where they've made a bad decision, and actually, well, when you flipped it round, I thought it was really fascinating, because maybe he just didn't need to be a sleazeball about it. Maybe he could have made different choices. And I think that's the thing with and that's something that I've noticed with you and the work that we've done together, is there's always this empathy for the other side. And men and women are effectively, we've all had different stories, we've all had different things happen to us, and there's often deep-rooted reasons why those things have happened. So I'm not condoning what he did. Was I wouldn't do it again, but perhaps maybe in future, maybe if I could do it all over again, I might have said something like, you're acting a bit like a sleazebag, I don't really want to continue this date with you. And maybe I could have been a bit stronger in my boundaries. However, there's something deep rooted in females that we don't feel like we can do that, because we're in a dark field near polytunnels with cauliflower. We're not in the middle of people. So I mean, that's just one scenario, right, that's happened to me, but I know that you've probably been put in those situations by other males in your past, and they'll have their own reasons why they've behaved in that way. I'm going to let you talk now, but I felt like
I think it's really interesting, because we were talking about this off camera, and I think one of the things that you said that really interested me was, you said I shouldn't have done that. And I was like, why? Because it didn't end well, because you were uncomfortable. But my point was really that we tend to, as women, we tend to go, I shouldn't have done that, I made a poor decision, and we feel bad about ourselves for doing that. Okay, but where's his self-responsibility? Where's his responsibility to behave? So I just realised the sun's coming through my window, and you can't really see me very well, but where's his responsibility to behave in a safe, protective, manner that allows you to feel comfortable? Would you have felt that uncomfortable if his behaviour was different? And you're not responsible for his behaviour, he is. So it's very easy to look at decisions that we make in isolation and go, I shouldn't have done that. And there's probably a part of you that was sat in that restaurant and kind of had this kind of inkling that you were uncomfortable, there was a reason why you were uncomfortable. You don't want to make a scene. Also, behaviour like that, like the expensive wine, it's almost like, we should be grateful, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to be? We're supposed to be grateful for the attention, for a man spending money on us. We're supposed to be grateful for that, are we not? Isn't that not, that's one of the stories that we...
Well, it's the chivalrous. Oh, I'm going to order for you. I'm going to Eliza Doolittle you. And it's like, it reminds me, when I say Eliza Doolittle, it reminds me of that film. She, at the end, she throws her slippers at him, because he's created this person that is good for nothing apart from to respond to his every whim, which I think is really interesting.
But it's interesting for me. What was really interesting that you took responsibility for his behaviour.
Which I think often a lot of us do.
Yeah, it's like in that situation, yes, you were responsible for choosing to get in the car and go there. And maybe with what you know now, you would have chosen differently. But when you don't have a voice, when you grow up thinking that you're supposed to be grateful, you're supposed to be, demure, and you're supposed to be, more submissive in a male-female relationship. And that's the story. That's the story we grow up with. That's not, and there's no blame there, because men grow up with this story too. And I think that's the point we got to, was like, it's really easy to take his behaviour and get really angry at him for behaving that way. I mean, you didn't, but I've seen it in a lot of situations, get really angry at the person. Okay, and the behaviour is unacceptable. There's no getting away from that. To be intimidating, to be kind of controlling, and to say things in the way that they were said, that's manipulative, to kind of make the comments about your appearance. It's like, and then, it's like, I'm going to make you feel bad so that when I lean in to kiss you, you're grateful for it. Right? It's like, okay, but where does that come from?
Blowing up Zoom.
So, have we frozen? I'm just going to keep talking. And so where does that come from? Because someone that's really secure in their own personality, someone that's really secure and confident in themselves, doesn't need to make anyone else feel worse, and doesn't need to influence or control or dictate their decisions. You just, when you're feeling really confident, you say, right, this is how it is. I like you. And if they say, well, actually, not for me, you accept that, because you don't take it inside and it doesn't connect with your internal hurts and insecurities. So it's not that I'm not making excuses for anybody's behaviour, but we are all acting out behaviours based on trauma that we have experienced. And when I talk about trauma, I'm not talking about specifically just adverse events that have happened. It's not just violence or sexual abuse or abandonment, or it's not just those things. It's not just war or accidents, or it's not just an adverse situation that causes trauma. It's also the things that you should have had and you didn't get. As you grow up as a child, if you're not properly cared for, supported, or your caregivers just don't understand, how to provide emotional safety, and if they are then they're acting out their own insecurities on their child. So we're all coming from this point. We all have it. I've not met a single person in my lifetime, when I look back knowing what I know now, that is not acting, even if it's just in small ways, out of the trauma that they have experienced as a child, or through their formative years, or even as we get older in the workplace. We're all acting that way.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so important about the work that you do. We are effectively, we go back to that word victim. We are all victims of a patriarchal society. We are all playing out a narrative that we've been, the damsel in distress, the hero, the bad guy, the witch, it's stories. It's all the stories we've been brought up on. He possibly thought he was being chivalrous by behaving the way that he did, because perhaps his dad was like that. I don't know. I mean, we can dissect. I mean, I'd love to sit and dissect all of that, but that's, I think, what I love about what your work is. It's not about blaming people for their behaviors. It's about people enabling people to take responsibility for their own behaviors and moving through that, which is where we move from shame into shamelessness.
I mean, it's even when you talked about then about, we brought up to believe in like good and bad, and whereas what in life is good or bad? What in life is all the way good or all the way bad? It isn't. It's varying degrees of okay. It's varying degrees of grey. It's not, it's not black and white, it's everything in life. And yet we can see that logically. Our brain handles that when we're looking at other things. But when it comes to ourselves, we have this shame attached to the bits we perceive as wrong or bad, or shouldn't have happened or should have done. And that keeps us stuck in this frame of mind that we're not quite good enough. We don't deserve all the wonderful things in life. We don't, there's parts of this not owning all of ourselves as just being human. That's what we are. That doesn't mean that everybody's behavior is okay. It just means understand that everybody's behavior is coming from somewhere.
Yes.
It's like laws of spirituality, and I don't even like to call them laws, because they're not laws, they're just truth. It's just this thing is true. Cause and effect. One of the basic laws of, like, the law of cause and effect. Okay, everything has a cause. For somebody to behave the way that they did, there was a cause for it. Now, that doesn't mean that it's okay for them to behave and take that hurt out on everybody else. That's not okay.
Yeah.
But it is good for us to understand where it comes from, not only because then we stop seeing it, oh, well, what did I do to make them treat me like that? Well, you didn't do anything. They treated you like that because of their own hurt, because of their own insecurities. But when we can see that, it just releases us from this victimhood, and also from this idea that, you know, the blame, that it's somebody else, it's somebody. We then get to accept responsibility for ourselves, and that's all we can do. Be responsible for ourselves. Everyone else is responsible for themselves, and if their behavior that stems from their hurts, their insecurities is not nice, then you have every right to go, look, I don't want that in my life. And you draw a boundary over it and just say, no, that's not what I want. But that's where the understanding comes in. Says, I understand why you're like that, but I don't want that in my life, because that's not who I am. I'm responsible for my well-being, and your behaviour is not good for it. Therefore, I'm removing myself from that situation.
And you've experienced this firsthand, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, so you know my story. You know, I was sexually abused as a child. You know, and that comes with all of those connotations of, you know, shame and what did I do? What could I have done differently? That it was, you know, somehow I was responsible for that behaviour. I must have, you know, I think a lot of people experience this feeling that I must have done something for somebody to want to hurt me. I must have done something to deserve the hurt, because it comes back to this very, very childlike view of good and evil. Bad things happen to bad people, right? And this is the problem. It's like bad things happen to bad people. So I must be bad because something not nice has happened to me. So I must be bad. There must be a way I've deserved it somehow. And that's where this shame creeps in. And as a child, you can understand completely why you see it that way. And I think that's what I've worked very hard with, because that had real connotations. My mother was also, she was an amazing woman in many, many ways, and strong and decisive. And she would fight your corner. She would go to war for you, but she was also very volatile, very emotionally volatile. And so there was nowhere to go. There was no one to talk to about what was going on. There was no there was no real opportunity for a child to have a voice and say, I'm not comfortable about this. There's something. So you internalize it, and you begin to operate on the basis that is what you deserve. So at 15, when I met my previous partner, I was operating on the basis that That's what I deserved. That's the relationship that I deserved. He was a lot older than me. I was 15, he was like 23, 24. And I was accepting of his behavior because I believed that that's what I deserved. And so when he was controlling, it's important to know that I didn't think the relationship was abusive until I left.
Yeah.
I just thought it's just happy. It just wasn't a very nice relationship. It was just a bad relationship. I didn't realise it was abusive until I was well out of it, and also with Matthew, and then looking at the way he would do things and he would approach things, that just blew my mind. So it's taken a lot. It took a lot of work to kind of understand. But here's the thing: did my ex-partner, did he do those things on purpose? Did he make a conscious choice to be mean, manipulative, controlling, all of those things? No, he didn't. He's just grown up unhappy, insecure, not knowing how to express or get his needs met. And so he figured out at an early age the way to do it was through control, manipulation, and achievement. That was his, So is he making a conscious choice to do that to me? No. He's just trying to get his needs met in the only way that he has learned how.
Yeah. Yeah, and
does that make it okay? No.
No, of course.
No, it doesn't. But it's very easy to blame. What we don't realise is that there is no in the society that we live in, what affects us as women affects us because it has also affected men. So they have grown up believing a certain pattern of things and a certain way of doing things, and that this is how it should be done. And as women, we've grown up with our stories. We are both equally products of our experiences and narratives that have been told.
Yeah.
Since time immemorial. We both are.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that story. Because I know, hopefully the listeners will resonate. They may resonate, they may have similar experiences. And the thing that we were also talking about off camera is, you take it to that next level with regards to, creating these communities for people to feel safe. But actually the work that you're now doing is fascinating, is going into corporate environments to blow it up from the inside, I'm guessing.
So both myself and Matthew have been doing this for a while now, right? So one of the primary things that all of our clients say is that they feel safe to look at the things that they have not previously been able to deal with, because they know, especially because most of them, they know my story. They know everything from the abuse as a child, to the controlling relationship, to the drug addiction, to the recovery from that. They know that story. And I make it very clear, I am not sitting here as a perfect person that has never made mistakes. I'm sitting here as someone who has made so many mistakes, but I've now been able to see them from the perspective. And I think I know we haven't got lots of time, but I want to touch on this point, because it's one thing when you got my story out into the press, right? And it was my whole story. It was the childhood, it was everything, the drug addiction, the whole lot. And it came out, and a few people had made some comments about the drugs and all that sort of stuff. And you were like, how do you feel about that? And I was like, actually, if I don't own the mistake, if I'm not prepared to face the shame, then I don't get to own the courage and the bravery that it took to get myself out of that situation. How can I be proud of myself for the work that I did and how I changed things around if I'm not prepared to go, actually, I made a mistake and I messed up and I made some poor choices. And I was not a great person back then. So having that story out there, in some ways, it was really hard to see that in print, you know, in black and white, for everyone to see and everyone to make their own judgments about. And that's okay. But if you only in here, if you know that you don't get, you know, you don't get to own the courage, you don't get to own your bravery, you don't get to own your success if you don't first take a look at how you got there. And you usually get to success from some kind of failure, you know, some kind of mistake. If you don't want to face that, you're never going to embrace the success of it.
Yeah. You know, and there's always this fear of failure. There's always this, that you know, the words failure, fear, all of those things, they're actually opportunities for growth. They're, you know, the fact that, you know, so many people sit on the sidelines. I mean, Brené Brown said it best, but, you know, people sit on the sidelines and they are quite happy to comment and judge from the sidelines, but they're not the ones standing in the middle of the ring owning it. And I think there are not that many people who can honestly say that they're in that ring owning it. There are lots of us sat on the sidelines watching it through big screens on the television, you know, we can all sit and judge about people that are dancing or whatever they're doing, but they're not the ones that have actually taken that step to go and do that thing.
It's one of the things, this actually came up, and one of the things that we're trying to do in corporate now is actually, okay, we're really good at allowing people to feel safe, so that, because I can't address your mental health and your well-being.
Yes,
you can. I can't do it. I cannot do anything for you. It's the same. We are as addicted to our stories and to the shame and also all of the, you know, the chemicals that go in our brain, the adrenaline, all of that kind of stuff. We are as addicted to that as we are to any kind of drug, caffeine, cocaine, alcohol, whatever it might be. We are as addicted to it. So, and just like with any, you cannot do it, you cannot make somebody take that journey. No. You can't, and they can only do it for themselves. And you'll hear it, people talk about it with drug addiction all the time. Until they want to do it for themselves, they won't. But what can you do? You can create an environment where it is okay for them to be scared, but willing to take the risk, willing to fail, because they won't be judged for that failure. They're not going to be, you know, when we're talking about corporate, what we want to, you know, what we've started to do is now train senior leadership teams in what trauma actually is, how it affects our behaviours. There are pretty much 7 behaviours that are very much grounded in fear. And they're all the things, we put all these well-being programs in place. I start getting really passionate about this because we put all these well-being programs in place and we expect people to go and get themselves well without addressing the fact that they won't go and, you know, if they go and use the app that you've given them that helps them with the calmness and meditation and mindfulness, which is brilliant, all very useful tools. But if they are not also addressing the reasons why, they won't say to their boss, I've got too much work on. They won't say to their colleagues, I've got stuff going on at home that I can't cope with. And I'm just, when I come here, all I can do is just sit in front of my screen and not do any, and I'm not really functioning, I'm not achieving anything. The presenteeism that we see, if they aren't able to do those things, then that app, as lovely as it is and as great as their tools are it's a temporary sticking plaster, and it's never going to be the solution until we actually have companies that embrace their workforce as their community. And we came down from the hills where we were all out in our little communities and we had all this support. We had the babies following around, you know, the mothers and the fathers, learning about life and learning about everything as we go along. And we had the elders and the wisdom keepers at the top that have seen it all before. And we moved away from that because we went to places to work and earn money. And we see this kind of, you can't, it's an either or situation. You can either have community or you can have money and work and success. But what if those corporations become our communities, and those leaders at the top actually become the wisdom keepers and the elders that don't just know how, can't just guide you on how to do well in your job, but actually how to do well in life? How about they have the understanding of trauma and all the things that affect us in our society that take us away from ourselves? What if they have that understanding and they become those people? And that trickles down to everyone that's in that. It's about culture, it's about community in the workplace.
It's bringing the allyship that we were talking about with the men and the female. It's bringing that together, because I mean, so many people I know who worked in corporate, me being one of them, who left corporate, found the spiritual, had the spiritual awakening, thought that we needed to be sat in fields and living off grid, but actually realized we live in the real world. We are human. At the end of the day, we want nice things. We want a house. We want the thing, you know, we have, if we actually living in this experience, then we need to make it work for us.
Yes.
So, you know, there are ways to do that.
There are.
But, you know, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think that it's blending those experiences together, and that's what you guys do when you come in to those pieces.
Yeah, I think it's about giving, it's about education and understanding, and it goes back to the thing saying everyone, even those people right at the top of the ladder, they all have their trauma. And when they understand that about themselves, you understand it about everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, look at I always ask the question, what's the worst thing you could see in print about yourself? Well, you've done that, right?
Yeah, been there,
done that, bought the t-shirt. But I think if anybody, if you asked anyone that question, it makes them really think. Like, they'll sit there and they'll go, oh, it's normally to do with something traumatic that's happened to them. Happened to them, for them, however you want to phrase it, but it's normally deep-seated in something shameful.
Yeah, always.
Like, I mean,
but that's also where your greatest growth happens. That is where your greatest lessons happen. And I think that's the thing that, I don't know, we kind of, there's this, it's very simple to look at trauma and our experiences in such a bad light, but it's always worth remembering whatever was taken away in a situation, something took its place. So whatever you lost about yourself or about your ideas about yourself, you also gained something of equal, if not greater value. But you can't find it until you're prepared to delve deep into what it was. So for my situation, I was incredibly good at diplomacy. Right? You say to me now, you tend to be able to see it from everyone's perspective, and there's no blaming. A lot of that comes from my mum. As volatile as she was, and as insecure and unsafe as I felt in certain respects, I also got incredibly good at reading a situation and being the diplomat, so that volatility didn't happen, so that the blow up didn't come. I was very good at reading what was up and what was underneath, and actually going, okay, how can I phrase this in a way that's not going to cause that eruption? So
I guess also understanding what needs weren't being met for her. If it was, her blood sugar had gone through the roof, she needed food. It's like what I do with the kids. Like I can see with Lucy, like she needs to sit down and eat, but she won't physically go and do that for herself. Still not quite there yet, but yeah.
It is, and it's like, my mum was like, really, any criticism, because she was very insecure in herself, so any criticism she took so badly, and that would just, it would be a massive reaction, and it would be, well, I might as well just leave. I'm not doing any good here at all, blah, blah, blah. And it would come out like that. So I got very, very diplomatic, and I got to learn to read a room really well from being teeny tiny. Okay, so at 15, 16 years of age, that was absolutely no use to me whatsoever, because what I needed was the self-confidence and the self-esteem and the self-worth and the security that I didn't have. As an adult, now in my life, that's probably my most valuable skill.
Yeah.
What we will always get something in return for the thing that we have lost. And in regaining that, we amplify the gift that we've been given, but we don't get there until we switch out of this kind of, I was the victim in this situation rather than the survivor.
Yeah.
And we when we get out of that thought process and that feeling about ourselves, it opens the door to that kind of healing.
Yeah. Wow. That I love talking to you. We could talk about this for hours. I know this.
I know. Whenever we get on a call, it's always like, we're going to talk business, but actually we have this for an hour, and they go, oh, we better make sure that we do this.
There's an insight into how we work. I've absolutely loved having you on. I'd love to bring you back again as well to continue the conversation. I think there'd be so much more to uncover. But thank you again for sharing your story, your shameless story. And where can people find you? How can they reach you?
LinkedIn, really. It's the only place. I'm very rarely. You can follow me on Instagram. But I very rarely post there these days. I'm not on Facebook anymore. Removed myself from Facebook a little while ago.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, everybody, for listening to Shameless Stories. I hope you've enjoyed this episode.